Okay, so we look at Kingdom Come Deliverance at 21:9. Bloody hell, this game is brilliant. I had high hopes with the early look we had a long time ago. I was excited, but this has smashed everything I hoped for. It is a truly brilliant game. This is going to be like the new Witcher 3 in terms of propelling a studio into the spotlight from previously being unknown. And yes, I'm not saying it's as big as The Witcher 3, I'm just saying from a studio standpoint, it's very big. Anyway, before I glow any more about my experience with the game so far, let's go over the Ultrawide support. And this won't take long because the 21:9 support is as great as the rest of the game. It's perfect. I love you, Warhorse Studios. Seriously, so much love right now. Gameplay correctly shows off more on the sides of the screen at all moments, and there is a solid FOV slider from 60 to 75. It doesn't sound very high, but it is. I use 70. Sadly, it jumps in 5s, so it's not as flexible as I would like, but it does the job very well regardless. Screen effects use the entire screen space. All cutscenes are 21:9 and so fill the screen perfectly, leaving 16:9 users to have black bars. So beautiful. And even all menus are 21:9. Gone are the black bars from the early access preview. They now have a nice background stone to the sides, whilst keeping all menu elements locked in the center, and it looks fantastic. Lastly, loading screens are just black screens with the loading logo in the bottom right, and also an image that spans across the entire screen. I literally cannot fault this game 21:9 wise. Performance though, it's not quite as an immaculate story. It's optimized okay, but could do with some more work. At 3440 by 1440, I could run at just over 60 FPS on high everything settings. However, I found that being in a first person perspective, I really wanted greater than 60 FPS. It's just so much more comfortable. So I stuck to medium everything settings, though with textures on ultra high as it had no FPS impact, probably just needing more GPU memory space, of which a 1080 Ti has lots of. And I stayed in the high 70s, 80s on a GTX 1080 Ti. Now, there are still many times when FPS falls off, such as when there are lots of people on screen at once, and being close to buildings really hits performance hard. Like in big castles, your frame rate will fall by 20 FPS from your normal level. Sadly, to use ultra settings, I'd be in the 20s, 30s, and you can even smack the settings higher than the ultra preset by turning the distance sliders all the way up manually, but as you can imagine, performance is horrible at this point. A shame because, oh my god, this game is gorgeous. I'll be doing a video showing off ultra settings soon anyway, so you can see the graphics and performance properly then, but thankfully there are a good selection of graphics options to choose from and play with. However, there is no specific anti-aliasing setting, which is a little frustrating. Also, one thing to note is that applying graphics settings changes will result in a bit of a wait as the game loads them in. Like, I changed initially from medium to ultra high, and I waited over a minute for the changes to apply fully. A bit overkill. Hopefully this can be somewhat patched. General PC support wise, there are a few gripes. Firstly, the controller support is great, apart from one stupid issue. There is no sensitivity slider. What? No idea how they failed to implement one, especially after the preview version failed to have one either. So yeah, it makes controllers impossible to use because you can't look around at anything but a snail's pace. Here's hoping a fix comes soon. Next, the loading times are not good. You're forced to stare at a black screen too often, like when jumping into conversations with people, which is tedious. In its current state, it really benefits from being run on an SSD if you can do it. I don't know if they're going to be able to patch this and speed it up, but yeah, it does frustrate me. Finally, the game will jump straight into being borderless if you tab out at any point, and this absolutely kills performance. We are talking a 30 FPS loss, so make sure to go into the settings and change it back to full screen if you ever tab out for whatever reason, because otherwise you'll be slide showing your way around the world. I'm sure this will see a fix soon. Another weird thing I found is the audio support for 5.1 surround sound systems. The voice acting seems to try and always come out of the front center speaker, regardless of if the character talking is in front on the left or on the right. And in some cutscenes, occasionally the sound would get rather quiet, as if the person talking just moved away from you. It was never a serious issue, but something I'd like looked at, because otherwise the surround sound is great. So, gameplay. Where to start? This is why the game is so good. The world is built in your standard open world style. Everything soon becomes explorable if you want to walk around or ride around it on a horse. Every building in the game can be entered, well, if you can pick the lock. Pretty much everyone can be talked to. There are sprawling castles and small farms that dot this wide open world, and it is a significantly large world. It's not the biggest you'll ever have played, but it's still ample space for the setting. What's key though is somehow everything feels realistically distanced from each other. Even giant maps like that in AC Origins suffers from missions telling you to go find someone who got lost, and it turns out they're literally within eyesight of their home, but the story tries to make it out that they're in the middle of a massive trek. Somehow Kingdom Come Deliverance overcomes this standard issue, and I'd say that's in large part to the first person perspective. It makes distances feel greater even if you are covering the same distance that you would in third person. I also feel the game doesn't shy away from making you make long treks at times when other games might think it better just to fast travel you to them. And again, I like that. It sort of forces you into the world, and I never found it frustrating. Anyway, this world is the setting for your character who, without spoiling things, has a big tragedy and is forced to start a grand adventure, meeting massive numbers of people, visiting new locations, undertaking millions of tasks that feel perfectly natural in this world. It's hard to describe, but everything in this game feels grounded. It feels like a very real world, and what you're doing and how you're doing it just feels right. It doesn't feel overly ridiculous. Something most games inevitably do because they want to quickly propel you into this crazy, incredible character. Now, you start off with very little skill at all. You can swing a sword and shoot a bow, all of which is taught to you, but you have to level up with practice in order to use better equipment and fight better. Very standard mechanics. A significant part of this game, though, is role-playing. Conversations that will dictate how people behave towards you, treat you, support you, or dislike you. There is a ton of talking in this game that allows you to really flesh out the world around you and allows you to somewhat carve your own character by choices and actions. And this is where you get a clear sight of the depth and detail the devs have poured into this. Conversations will be affected by your clothes, how you look. Are you covered in mud and blood, or do you look noble and respectable? You find throughout the game that actions are pretty deep. It's not just a go from one checkpoint to the next kind of game. Instead, everything is branching, and a lot of what you do can be personalized and have multiple solutions. For example, early in the game, you can choose how to repay a debt. You can choose a rather underhand, crooked way to resolve the debt by stealing a ring. So you go to dig up the body the ring is on, the ring isn't there, and you're instructed by the game that you'll have to go back to talk to the guy who sent you there to explain that the ring is gone. However, if you're thinking on your feet, you can make the connection that, well, this guy was buried by the executioner who lives next door. It makes logical sense that the executioner may have taken the ring for himself, and so you can have a sneak around his property to find the ring. And indeed, you can find the ring in a locked chest if you have a lockpick on hand. If you don't do all this and just head back to explain the ring is gone, the guy will instruct you to go to the executioner and you'll need to do the same steps of stealing the ring from the house. But my point is, the steps to the quests are logical. The game gives you a lot of direction on what to do, but it also doesn't hold your hand 100% of the way. There are many moments where you've got to think, and the game allows you to have that freedom to think about what is happening, and it gives you a bit of free rein to entertain your ideas and try different methods of doing things. This is a core part of what makes this game so fantastic. The freedom, the robustness to the world that makes it so fun to play in. Now, like I said, you're able to fight in this. Both swordplay and archery are your two core fighting techniques. Yes, you have different weaponry, but they all fall into these general categories. And I really was worried about the fighting in first person, that it would be too clunky. The camera would feel awkward to fight in this position, and the fighting mechanic would be stiff. Basically, it wouldn't live up to the lofty heights of what the devs were championing it as. I'm so happy to say though that all my fears were quelled. The combat is brilliant. It's not perfect, but it's still fantastic fun. Again, back on my point of this game being grounded, aiming towards realism, not action heroism. Combat feels like you're wielding a heavy sword and you really are face to face with your opponent, both struggling for the final blow. You can't spin around and kill a million enemies in a few seconds. Instead, you focus on one opponent at a time. This certainly makes it so much more difficult when you start fighting multiple enemies at once, swapping between targets, dodging and attacking all at once. But because it's difficult, it makes it so much more fun. A robust set of combat mechanics paired with a good difficulty level makes games far more engaging and rewarding. It's not fun slashing through easy enemies and having no challenge. We're playing the game because we want to suck at the start and learn to get better. For archery, I really enjoyed the difficulty of it, the inaccuracy and slight awkwardness. You can't get a perfect shot every time. There isn't a reticle to display where the arrow will hit. Instead, you need to learn your grouping. Where will that type of arrow land with that type of bow? There are numerous types of arrows with different trajectories and different bows of growing strength. I personally really enjoy all the combat in this. Now, whilst AI for humans is generally very good, for animals, it's definitely not great. There is a hunting mission early on in the game, and it really drove home this point. Animals were mostly unaware of arrows thudding into the ground around them, and even when I started landing shots on a deer, they wouldn't be able to work out successfully how to run away without getting trapped in thickets in the wood. That said, I still had an absolute blast doing the hunting. It actually really helped to have the animals be a bit dumb because I was struggling to land my shots, so having them stop moving was a godsend. Yes, obviously I want the AI improved, but it didn't significantly negatively affect my experience. And this is the point I really want to drive home right now, with all the complaints people are blowing up online about all the glitches and bugs in the game. Yes, I ran into my fair share of weird issues, people clipping into each other, failing to open a door well, missions not initiating or requiring a reload of the last save game. But throughout all of this, I never once had a real issue with it. The minor bugs are completely standard in any big game release at the start. Name one title this big that's been perfect. I can't. And none I personally found extremely annoying. Admittedly, the 2 times I had to reload from the last save because a mission wouldn't initiate, the last save was conveniently recent, so it wasn't long to get back on track. But if we're going to talk about some genuinely bad bits of the game, we might as well point to the save game mechanic in this. I'm sure you're aware by now, but the saving in this is done automatically at certain points, or by sleeping, sitting down, or consuming a special drink. The idea, I suppose, being to try and make the game immersive, sort of realistic or something. And in a perfect world, yes, that would be brilliant. However, this isn't a perfect world. We all have complicated lives that unfortunately frequently veer off in a random direction at a moment's notice. So we need a way to save the game whenever we want without potentially being forced to lose a load of progress just because we don't have some saving tonic stuff on us. Now, luckily there is already a mod to fix this, no surprise, with infinite save states, so if you want, go and grab that. However, I wouldn't be surprised if the devs realize how horrible an idea this was and just patch it very soon. I hope they do. By the way, if you want to stick with the vanilla method of saving for now, I found the best thing to do was to check I last saved before I quit by going into the load menu, and you can see all your save states there. If a save just happened, you know you can leave safely. There are a lot of cutscenes, however, I personally had no issue with this because they are extremely engaging, brilliantly acted, well orchestrated with very fitting music throughout all scenes. I honestly didn't realize how many and how long some cutscenes were until I went to edit this video, and I usually am not a fan of long cutscenes, but the animations are bang on and there is a lack of usual awkward voice acting that you get in most games. Really big props to the dev team on this. Okay, so I've been going on for a bit now, so I'll rattle through some of the other points I just think you should know about. You can haggle for anything in this, fighting for a better price. Inventory management is okay, it could be better, and I'm sure like many RPGs, it'll see development and tweaks in time. Just think of how different The Witcher 3's system is now to its original state. Lockpicking is horrible, a really poorly executed mechanic in my book. You really can just go anywhere, like the whole world is open to explore. You have stamina, hunger, tiredness, and other meters to keep track of. They aren't intrusive, but they force you to maintain a more realistic pattern to life than usual games, like sleeping and eating. The stealth mechanic is robust enough. I was able to complete stealth missions with very little difficulty, and yeah, just all in all, I am loving the game. I'm going to give it a WAF score of 5. It's perfect from a 21.9 perspective, and of course, if you can't tell already, I firmly sit in the recommend camp. I'm loving playing this, and I see no reason why you wouldn't either. The setting, gameplay, graphics, story are all great, and the smattering of bugs and glitches are in no way enough to not recommend this. So I hope that gives you some information on the game runs at 21.9. Give this video a like if you found it helpful, and subscribe for future info. For another games at 21.9, head over to my channel, the WAF website. Hopefully I've covered it. If I haven't, then leave a comment down below and I'll try and cover it. And if you'd like to support the channel, the links to my Patreon page are in the description, and Amazon affiliate links are there too. See you later.
eternal rest grant. Shine upon them, and may the souls of all the faithful departed through the
What's that?
I feel quite hungry.